I call this meeting to order.
Here,
Anyway, uh, this will be our competition for July 2021. We were originally going to start with a board meeting at 6 o'clock. It's been postponed to August 4th. That'll be before the program meeting. But then Cheryl's going to be out of town again. I personally would like to lobby it for September because I think we have to plan the election and we need to have a meeting in September anyway, but we'll worry about that later. So anyway, it's just a competition tonight. Do we have any announcements from anybody?
Penny, do you have any comments on field trips?
She's eating.
I don't know if she can hear us. I wouldn't
Stuff
count
in
on.
her face anyway.
They,
so-
they look frozen.
Yeah, they are frozen. Well, so we don't have a field trip report tonight. That's fine.
Not right now, I guess.
Check,
Anyway,
check the galleon, whatever is current is at the galleon at this point. So,
and things will get emailed out too if anything's happening.
good evening, Frank.
Good evening.
And then another thing I think we need to think about is we're going to have an election in November. And I've been vice president for 4 years. I don't plan to run again. Cheryl is timed out for 2 years. We got to come up with somebody. I think Rosie wants out, and Bill Hood has been treasurer for 21 years, and he wants out. So
He doesn't do anything.
I suggest we elect a dictator.
how about you?
No.
I hear
well.
Trump's available.
Keep your mouth shut. Then.
Well, anyway, so just keep in mind that we do need a number of us are on the board anyway, but we do need officers for the club, and that will be coming up shortly. And then I'm going to do an announcement for the August program. I want to do something about books, and I asked Karen Carson, and she politely declined and said she doesn't want to do a program. And she did one before. But what I think we would do for the August 4th program is everyone that's done a book can talk about their book. And anyone who has questions can ask about it because we're going to have those turned in eventually for our end of the year project. We'll have a book competition. So I think August 4th will be about books. I don't have plans for September, but for October, being Halloween and coming out of COVID, hopefully coming out of COVID, I want to have a show and tell of just your weirdest stuff. Keep it tasteful, no extreme pornography or morbid stuff. You don't have to be like Ouija with your crime scene victims and all that, but just come up with something weird. I mean, it'll be a show and tell, just the weirdest stuff you can come up, the brightest, the darkest, whatever. That'll be our program for October.
Alan,
And
I've got a number of pictures of you that I plan to send in.
Well, I think you can mask my eyes. So anyway, if there are no other announcements, I don't think there's anything else pressing. So I would turn it over to Tony to introduce our judge.
I'm going to turn it over to Jim because Jim knows our judge.
Oh,
I do know Rudy. He and I are in a group in Irvine called the Photographers Exchange. I don't know how long Rudy's been in. I've been in it about 20 years. Rudy is you're a professor of photography. I don't know your exact title at UCI. Is that right, Rudy?
Well, not in terms of a title. I'm a part-time lecturer and full-time lab tech.
Okay, very good.
So I got kind of a dual.
Right. So, and Rudy he's an excellent photographer. So I expect he will be an excellent judge. And that's about it. I'll let him
Yeah,
tell you something about
I've been part of
himself.
the Photographers Exchange since I want to say late 90s. So also 20 plus years.
Yeah. Well, that'd be 30 plus years.
Well, just
Well,
yeah,
you said the late 90s. Okay.
right.
Yeah, you were a member long before I was. I know that. So,
Mm.
so okay, I'm done.
All right then.
All right.
Rudy, do you have a
So-
photographic style, or is there something you like to do? What's your focus?
I'm not so sure I have a focus per se, but I guess if I had to put it underneath a photo umbrella, I would say urban landscape.
Okay,
But typically I'll choose subjects that I think have kind of aesthetic potential and see how good I am at kind of bringing that to the forefront.
And you use a lot of times you use a large format, and you did a lot of work in Japan. Is that correct?
For many years, actually, that was my main project since 2005 to 2018. I would travel to Japan, oftentimes with my 8x10 or 4x5 camera. Since that time, I shifted more to a digital capture. So I haven't used a view camera in quite a while. But yeah, I don't know if anybody in the group has been to Japan, but I find it quite photogenic.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be there at April Easter time next year. Be
Oh.
my first trip. So
you know, the
Nice.
images of Japan are always very photogenic.
Can I ask you why Japan? You choose Japan? Because I really like Japan.
Yeah, for me, it was like, because I'm at UC Irvine, I have a lot of students that are from there or go there. And I had a student who joined the English teaching program. And then one thing led to another, got an invitation to go. So me and a couple other students went. And from then on, it just continued. It became a project and a pursuit of sorts. So
Thank you.
Nice.
yeah, it's been rewarding.
and I can attest that his photos of Japan are pretty outstanding.
Okay,
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah,
Well,
you're
if-
welcome, Rudy.
if we're ready to start, I will start to share. To remind everybody how this works, I'm going to bring up monochrome first. And we will do an initial step through each image so that everybody gets to see what's up for competition tonight. Besides our judge, I'm the only person who's seen all the images. Once we go through the first step through, I will go back to the first image. Our scorekeeper, Elaine, will announce the title of the image. And then Rudy, we'd like you to give us your comments and your total score for that image, and then we'll move on to the next image. So if everybody's ready. Let me see. Share content. Oops.
Yeah, she was there a second ago.
Okay, monochrome, we have 14 images.
You want to see the monochrome?
Are you
Step it
seeing
through?
them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this is our first monochrome image.
Broken wagon wheel number 2.
Rudy, it's up to you to comment.
Okay, so you just want to comment or the score or both?
We'd like to hear your delightful comments and critiques and then the score.
Hmm. Yeah, this one I felt that had a lot of things working for it in terms of the monochrome aspect of it. It's got a nice kind of sky with making it more dramatic. I thought the viewpoint was pretty good, pretty strong. And then the shallow depth of field kind of works in its favor as well. The only criticism I guess I would have is just the way the background can be a little bit distracting despite the shallow depth of field. But otherwise, I thought the composition was fairly effective. I like the top left arc kind of occupying the left top corner. And then into the right area, kind of a similar, but not quite, the arc of the right wheel is not quite as fulfilled as the top one. But again, it's kind of disappearing into the grass. So all in all, I thought it was a pretty effective photograph. And as far as the score, I think I gave it a 15.
Okay,
Burros wandering the big dunes.
Yeah, this one, if you had a category of originality or something of that nature, I think it would have scored high in that particular category. Composition wise, I'm not sure if it benefited from the panorama type of framing. I thought the sky, as a result of that, the sky and the floor are a little bit crowded in my estimation. So composition wise, I don't know if it was shot this way or cropped, so it's hard for me to say. As far as the technique goes, I think it was pretty well executed. It's kind of it's one of those photographs that situate themselves within being kind of humorous, kind of an odd juxtaposition with the donkeys out in the kind of an environment you don't often associate with them. And the burrows, let's see, what was the title of it?
This is titled Burros Wandering the Big Dunes.
Okay. Yeah, but otherwise, I wasn't sure about the placement of the bush in the right of center in terms of the composition is concerned. But in total score, I gave it a 5, 10, 15 as well.
Okay. Cayucas Pier at night.
Yeah, this one really, when I first saw it, I thought it was a very kind of the impact. I think it had like a element of wow to it, so kind of scored it high on those merits. The only thing I'd say in terms of the composition, I'd almost would have liked to have seen it cropped with the dual reflections at the bottom out, and then perhaps a little closer to the edge of the pier. But I really like the effect of the nighttime shot, the figures or figure on the actual pier itself. And then from a technical point of view, just enough shutter speed to render the surf recognizable, both in terms of a little bit of kind of a spray effect that was captured with just a slow enough shutter to not be a total blur. So I thought there was a lot of things working in its favor with this one. And as a result, I gave this one 5, 10, 16.
Mobile Enterprise.
Yeah, this one here, I thought could have, I would almost prefer a different angle. It's kind of a difficult angle to achieve. I can get the guy with the cart, but then the two people just above it, I think is a bit of a distraction. And I don't know if it's a question of timing, if there was anything the photographer could have done, but I like the way it was framed. Otherwise, the diagonal works really well to create a perspective that goes beyond the frame and towards the left corner. And then the fact that you can make a little bit of details. When I first saw it, I thought he was wearing a mask, but it's hard to determine from this angle. But he occupies the frame from top to bottom pretty nicely. And it's kind of a nice kind of street. I mean, I take it he's a street vendor of some kind. Is this like a little marketplace up in Santa Maria? Anybody know?
I believe this is a shot from England.
I don't
Oh.
recognize it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, regardless, I think it works pretty well. And as far as the score is concerned, I gave it a 15.
Oops, here we go.
Pontoon boat captain.
Yeah, another one that wins the award for the cute photography of the submissions. But as far as the composition, it makes me question whether or not it was framed this way with the format being somewhat square, because it looks just a little bit, as far as the composition is concerned, kind of somewhat forced to kind of fit the confines and make it. I wasn't that impacted by it in terms of like looking at it and having a visceral response. Otherwise, the composition is fine, but again, I felt there was maybe a little bit too kind of forced into the rectangle. The technique is well executed insofar as converting it to black and white, if that was the case, and good. The dog itself has a good varying shades of grays and a good black and a decent white, And for the score on this one, I gave it a 5, 10, 15 as well.
Samuel Beckett Bridge.
I thought this was pretty strong. I really like the contrast of the suspension part of the bridge itself, and just enough detail to see I guess the guide wires for it. And then the architectural in the background, the gentle slope of the bridge itself, and the kind of shimmering water in the foreground, and the nice gradation from light to dark, to the darkest dark up in the top as the sky gets a little bit gray at the horizon as it makes its way up to the higher reaches of the sky. I like the shape of the bridge itself. So they got some good geometric elements kind of working in its favor. I think for the score, 5, 10, like 16 on this one.
Steve Goff.
When I first saw this one, I think I was kind of immediately wowed by it. I thought this one had all the elements that I would look for in terms of a very successful photograph. It's got nice dynamic lines happening here with the wires and the shadows, and nice light play of light and shadow. Nice perspective, again, kind of working with a broader foreground. The sax player positioned in the lower third, but in the middle, more or less in the middle in terms of its horizontal axis, and then kind of fading off into a deep, rich black. So creating a wonderful contrast, and both in terms of the shapes being represented, and again, the difference between the brightest light and the darkest black, in addition to a number of nice midtones in the work. So this one, I actually scored a 21. This was, in my estimation, judging from the 3 categories, everything really came together with this one.
The Big Sleep.
The Big Sleep, I like the crowded frame. I think it on the one hand, it's kind of playful. It's got a playful title as well. It's got good tonal ranges throughout. So I like the composition in terms of being like a crowded frame. Everything kind of packed together. It kind of reinforces or emphasizes the nature of the Big Sleep, with all these, are they seals, walruses, and, well, whatever they are, kind of piled up on top of each other. In terms of the monochrome aspect of it, got a nice wide variety of tonal range. So it works pretty well. As far as the score is concerned, I gave it a 16.
Disney composite.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty effective as kind of an abstract photo, kind of multiple layers or multiple exposures or a kind of composite using Photoshop, whatever the case may be. The technique in of itself doesn't call attention to itself other than that it's more than one image. What I meant to say is that whether it was taken in camera, if the camera has that capability, or if it was just kind of layered in Photoshop. Regardless of that distinction, I think it's pretty effective. It's one of those photos that really you can spend some time with trying to make sense, almost as if you're looking at a multi-layered Escher drawing. So it's got different levels of depth. It occupies the frame quite nicely. And so, and then the black and white nature of it too, you got some different tonal ranges that again kind of delineate the depth and the space of the image within. So it's, I'm not sure if I would recognize it as a Disney Hall, right? Is that what the title suggested?
Disney composite.
Mm-hmm. Well, in any event, to me, it doesn't suggest a definitive place necessarily, but other than this kind of mishmash of architectural elements that again proves to be pretty effective. And for the score, I scored it 5, 10, 17.
Enchanting Sisters.
Yeah, a nice portrait and kind of a solid profile view. I would almost wanted to see more of a 3/4 profile, but in terms of judging what I do see, it works pretty well. The textured background kind of gives it a little bit of a ground that doesn't compete with the two women, the two sisters, I take it. And it has a kind of a quietness to it in terms of a portrait. Looking off camera, it does compel a viewer to wonder what they are looking at, if anything, or they're just being kind of directed by the photographer. It's got nice subtlety in terms of the tones, which, unless there's a reason to make it a high key portrait, works well in this case. You know, the delicacy of the fabrics, you know, put off by the texture of the background. So not so much competing elements, but rather complementary elements to the photograph. So I think it was overall pretty effective. And again, I seem to give a lot of 15s, and I gave a 15 to this one.
Los Osos Oak and IR.
Yeah, this one here works, I think, really well. It's a viewpoint of a kind of really dramatic tree in terms of the tree itself, if I can assign like a characteristic to the tree. And in that regard, it's the right angle to photograph it, kind of filtering light coming through. And you can see the whiteness of the sky, creating a nice contrasting element. And you got areas of the branches that are deep and black, deep blacks where the leaves occupy the midtones. I like the angle coming in from the lower right and kind of making its way up to the upper left, kind of meandering at that, various kind of branches going off in every direction. So in general, I think it's a well executed image. In terms of the actual score, again, it's a 15.
My shot is better than yours.
Couple things about this photo. I really like the composition, and I like what is being photographed. And to be fair, it kind of suits my sensibility at the type of photograph I would shoot if I was at Yosemite. In fact, I don't know if Jim remembers, but I did a series at national parks. So as far as the sensibility of it, I really liked it. What I didn't like is the treatment. And I can't tell if I know that one of the keywords listed was infrared. So I don't know if this was an attempt at infrared, but it's intentionally over the top with its contrast. And then, to me, it's not the type of photograph that required it. I thought that it wasn't playing to its strong suit, which to me is this nice humorous element of seeing all the photographers vying for the same vantage point at Yosemite. which is often the case and kind of to the point. And the nice kind of weather involved at this moment. Everybody's bundled up, kind of, I'm assuming it's sometime in the wintertime or unless they had a freak storm. But it works well on so many levels. I just wish there was more of a traditional printing technique. And yet I still gave it a 15 because I felt strongly about the content of the image, not so much about the technique.
Walk this way.
I like the title of it, because you got this one solitary figure who doesn't appear to be walking about a third of the way into the scene in the opposite direction. So by virtue of the title and then the people walking in the opposite direction at the midpoint of the frame. And I love the little ceiling of umbrellas of creating this canopy. Normally, I think under certain lighting conditions, there would be more shadows, but it looks like it's kind of an overcast, kind of soft light, which doesn't hurt it necessarily. But there's a lot going on in the photo. And I think the only thing that might have kept it from getting a higher score is that it's really busy. And I'm not sure if from a photography point of view, choosing a different angle of view or what the photographer wanted to emphasize, if they had many options to eliminate that busyness. But nonetheless, I think it's an interesting photograph. It works well as black and white. I imagine it as a color one having too many kind of colorful elements that it would create even added busyness, as it were. But otherwise, I think there's a lot to recommend, but the overall busyness just conspires against it just so. And as far as the score, again, I gave it a 15.
Mannequin number 2.
This one's interesting because it almost implies an element of motion. And by virtue of being mannequins, we can assume that they were not. So the effect is kind of interesting. I would kind of put it in the same camp as the Disney one, insofar as it has this kind of abstract feel to it. It almost feels like cutouts. So it's an interesting treatment. I think it has a certain level of intrigue and compels one to again spend time with the image and try to decipher just what we're looking at. It's hard to say if there was a particular type of filter employed with Photoshop, and what kind of effects were completely used. And insofar as the ground rules, guys, were there any limitations as far as digitizing or Photoshop?
No,
No.
no limitations at all.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, actually. And I think it works. Again, this is a good choice for black and white. It's very strong in terms of its contrast. And I gave it a 16.
Okay, we need to break the tie for 3rd place and honorable mention. And we need to look at number 3.
Okay.
With Cayucas Pier. Number 6, Samuel Beckett Bridge.
Number 6. Okay. I'm bringing them up on my bridge window as you announce them.
The Big Sleep. And Mannequin number 2. So from these 4, we need to pick a 3rd and an honorable mention.
Oh boy. I'm going to go with the bridge for number 3. And honorable mention will be the night photo, number 3.
Which photo? The night photo? Oh, Cayucas Pier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready. This is Broken Wagon Wheel number 2 by Jim McInnes. Burroughs Wandering the Big Dune by Gregory Doudna. Cayucas Pier at night, and honorable mention by Elaine Calvert.
Nice image, Elaine.
Thank
Go
you.
on, Elaine.
Mobile Enterprise by Harold Litwiller. Pontoon Captain by Penny Powell. Samuel Beckett Bridge, and our third place by Tony Martindale. Nice, Tony.
Very nice image.
Yeah.
Good, Tony.
Good work, Tony.
Steve Goff, and our first place image by Ed E. Paul.
Ed, great job. I'm glad to see this image won.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good image, Ed.
The Big Sleep by Cheryl Decker. Disney Composite, and second place by Jim McInnes. Nice.
Confusing.
How many?
Enchanting Sisters by Gregory Doudna.
You should have seen their mother. She was stunning.
Los Osos Oak in IR by Elaine Calvert. My Shot is Better Than Yours by Cheryl Decker.
I love the title.
Walk This Way by Harold Litwiller. And Mannequin Number 2 by Jim McInnes.
I should have known.
You should have.
How much did Jim pay you? Okay, we're going to go to color. We have 15 images. We'll do a step through real quick, and then we'll go through and judge. Okay, our first image.
A Photographer's Playground.
Yeah, I think it has an interesting title and it's kind of apt for this particular shot. I really like the subtle tones throughout, the nice kind of almost kind of a pastel treatment of the hills, the various hills, and then the photographer. And I especially like the actual posture of the photographer, kind of like this kind of curved back and kind of almost as if to get the proper view through the viewfinder of the camera, and positioned over here to the left. And then you see the little details, what's on the ground right beside him. And so as photographers viewing this, we can all kind of relate to that experience. And I thought it was a strong composition, good quality of light. And as a result of those things, I felt this was a 20.
Birds of a Feather.
yeah, there's a couple of shots that emphasize out at the birds, and when I looked at it, I thought there was kind of a treatment of the background versus the colorful nature of the birds. So with the birds, I thought there was well treated, the color worked, and I wasn't sure whether or not the background was desaturated or kind of had a sepia tone type of treatment to it, or it could have been, I suppose, photographed that way in nature. And I guess I was looking for a little bit more room around the birds themselves, just a little bit more headroom and just a little bit of room beyond the bottom left-hand corner. And as a result of that, I gave it a 7, 13, 19.
Boxcar shadow play.
Boxcar. Yeah, this is another abstraction that I really enjoyed viewing. I love all the little shadow kind of light or play within light and shadow with all the rivets, especially just high enough to cast a shadow. And then that little kind of port window, I take it, and just a pattern that all the rivets make. And there's a wonderful subtlety at play. And as a result of that, well, I'll go on to make a few more comments. With the color palette, I think was really strong, even though it's kind of monochrome within the yellow orange, and then offset by the kind of black blue of the window itself. But a lot of nice things to recommend it. And the nice kind of undulations of the sheet metal as well. A lot of interest. The more, it's one of those type of photographs that the more you spend time with it, the more you begin to discover the little details. And so I thought it was well executed, and 612, give it an 18. And I have to make a confession. I read the wrong score for the birds. If I can back up,
Yeah.
I apologize for that. But I had it actually a 13.
Okay.
Okay, this is butterfly.
The butterfly I felt was pretty strong. I really like the angle of view on it. It just kind of positioned it just a little bit. It has a kind of a slight upward angle, and then the detail, kind of wonderful details in the actual butterfly itself, especially like the little, I don't know if you call those antennae, kind of emanating from the center of his head out into the green field of the foliage, and then the folds of the leaves themselves. Really nice formally. I really liked how form and color and light all come together in this one. Angle of view, composition. I thought it was a very strong image, and kind of gave it an 18 as a result. Nice compression of space with the telephoto lens, I would venture to say.
This one is titled End of Day.
Yeah, this one here, I think there was an excellent example of really effective color grading. Kind of love the various gradations of color and light. Again, kind of going from the right side of the rock and then up towards the sky. And then I love the little kind of shadow silhouettes of the figures right there on that, just a little swath of light with, I couldn't tell if that was kind of spray or smoke or mist, that kind of shrouding that little area of the rock. And then the kind of silhouetted small rock out in the water. Let me move my screen just a little bit. So, and then the scale of the rock, of course, adds another dimension. It really makes dwarfs the people, and it gives an indication of how massive this rock really is. And as a result of that, I gave it a 6, 7, 19.
LA Rain.
Oxymoron, if there ever was one, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't we wish for this kind of weather? Yeah. So this one here, I like the composition. I like the railing in the foreground kind of leading towards the train itself, which is, I guess, is another oxymoron to public transportation such as it is, although it's getting better. And you got nice couple accents of color on the railroad tracks themselves, and a little bit of yellow in the light. And then the rest looks somewhat desaturated. I'd almost really love to see this exploit the reflections and the color therein a little bit more. I feel that the desaturation element, if I'm reading it correctly, didn't necessarily help it. I thought that you see where the reflections are in the lower half of the image, I think could have been exploited to greater effect. But nonetheless, I gave it I still gave it 18 points. So I thought it was strong enough to merit, strong consideration.
Masked tanager.
Yeah, this one is a nice study of the bird, and I think I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more room, and maybe instead of a really strict profile, kind of look at it from a different view. But again, when judging or evaluating photographs, it's often we can begin to kind of imagine what an alternative view might be. But obviously we have what we have to work with in terms of the image in front of us. So there's a lot of nice things happening in with the color. I like how the color of the bird kind of plays against the background that's out of focus. It's got the same kind of tonal or color tonalities kind of mimic and repeat themselves. And then I like the shape of the branch coming in from the left and then making a slight kind of beeline towards the top left. I just felt it kind of wasn't as complete as it could have been perhaps, but it's one of those that's kind of tough to score. And let me bring up my score here. And I gave it a 13.
Piedras Blancas.
Yeah, this one here, I thought was just a little bit tight on the top, and I would have liked to have it a little bit more breathing room, as it were. Because otherwise, I thought it was interesting formation, and I like how the color in the foreground kind of leads our eyes up into the rock, and just the gentle sloping up diagonal at the top of the rock as it gives it shape. And then the birds on the left, if I was to recommend like a Photoshop treatment, I might have said, well, maybe repeat the birds on the opposite side if the photographer is into heavy digital manipulation. Not an entire necessity, but just kind of a curiosity to see what the effect would be. And because of the shape of the rock too, I felt that it kind of called for greater symmetry. So if that would have been an option, I kind of would have liked it maybe just more positioned toward the center and have like equal space on the right than what we see on the left. But there's a lot of interesting features with texture, and then the kind of, I really like the various tonal changes in the foreground kind of leading up to the base of the rock. So that works really well. And then, but yeah, there's just a couple things I think technical wise that they could have elevated just a little bit higher, and they might include elements, maybe just a tad more saturation, or the yellow shifted more to a pure yellow. Little details like that, I think, may contribute to a more impactful photograph. Having said that, I gave it a 15.
Smoke break.
This one here, I like the color palette. The only thing that I was kind of not sure where the blur was actually coming from. Although I like that element of uncertainty or ambiguity, I'm not sure if it contributed to a more meaningful composition, because I like how the space is divided up into these compartments. Starting from the left, we got the kind of red pillar, and then the kind of window with the reflection. And then you have the kind of white area surrounding, on the left of the doorway, kind of leading into the establishment. And then the middle part where the figure is looking, the man is looking off to one side. And then the blur comes into play. Again, I just can't quite figure out what is actually blurring, because it looks like there's something in the basket of the bike, and then the blur starts from there. And so if there's somebody's photographing the group, I'd love to hear the story behind it. But then you got the woman walking in the opposite direction of the gentleman's gaze. So I thought that worked pretty well. And the color palette overall works nicely. And the bike itself gives us a little clue as to what's going on here. The ferryman the townhouse, something USA. Okay. And as far as the score goes, 14 on this one.
By the river's edge.
Yeah, this one I was taken by the nature of the photograph itself. Insofar as, again, it's kind of these falls into the abstract category. I think with a photograph like this, I would have liked to have seen it maybe really push in terms of the reflective qualities of the color and really push that kind of shimmering effect of it. Because again, this is one of those photographs, I think, that the certain level of exploitation was kind of left on the floor, so to speak, and just kind of upping the ante and creating it a little bit even more dynamic. Because I think it's a photograph that kind of lends itself to that type of treatment. Like, it's like, why stop there? You know, it's like, let's push it a little bit further, not go way over the top like an HDR image, but just give it just a little bit more oomph. And I think they would have a little bit more impact. Not necessarily define what we're actually looking at, other than kind of the generalities of what we are, viewing. And so I think there was just a little bit more that we can push it more, and as a result of that, this one also gets a 15.
Kelp.
Yeah, this one here, I think, kind of speaks to what I was talking about with the previous one. This one, I think, does resemble a photograph that you kind of push the saturation and the brightness of the yellow orange color in this kind of black orange type of field. Again, there's a high level of ambiguity in terms of what we're looking at. And so I view it more in terms of its formal concerns and elements, kind of deep shadow, bright light, interesting shapes, kind of very angular and dynamic. And so I thought there was a adequate level of mystery in terms of what we're looking at, but by the same token kind of compels us to spend time with it to try to decipher it. The title really doesn't help, at least in my view, but I like the image itself. And as a result of that, I gave it a 17.
Locomotive.
Locomotive, I think this is kind of a, classic shot of the bottom half of the locomotive. You can see the machinery of it. I think it works pretty well. This is another one that I would have thought a different angle might have emphasized the design elements a little bit stronger. That element in the foreground with the valve kind of going up from on the right diagonal detracts a little bit, because I think the real emphasis would have been in I don't know what you call them, wheels on a train, and then the kind of like the piston element of it. And I like the treatment of the light and creating this nice shimmer of light on the well, you can't see me move my mouse, so that's not going to help. But the area where you have the highlight, again, I think a view which is more straight on, which is something I tend to favor. So I might be speaking from a bias, but nonetheless, I think it would be worth consideration or worth considering in terms of taking the photograph. It's of course, it's speaking after the fact, but nonetheless, there's some other elements that I think do work in its favor. I love the reflection in the puddle. And again, the light that was chosen, the color grading that was applied to it, I think works well. So a lot of good things happening, but then a couple other ones that just make it fall just short of making it a complete photograph. And with that in mind, I gave it a 14.
Microburst.
Yeah, this one is great. I like it. I mean, there's that cloud formation is awesome, and the low horizon, kind of like a big sky treatment. I'd be curious as to where it was actually photographed. It's one of those moments that you see driving by, or whatever your daily experience might be. And I'd be curious to hear how the lighting condition was. Again, I think this is a photograph that kind of calls for a little embellishment in terms of bringing those yellows out, the subtle oranges that are there in the lower part of the sky, and just make it more dramatic. I think it's an opportunity to just really emphasize those elements. I mean, the cloud formation is there, and by virtue of just nature, it has a lot going for it. But why not process it just a little bit heavier and really kind of really finesse out some of those details and have multiple layers of tonalities at work that I think would add further drama to the image. Because everything else, I feel it very strong image, and I gave it an 18 as a result.
Nostalgia.
Good title. I think this really has an interesting flavor. The treatment of the green. This, normally when you call something nostalgia, we might assume a sepia tone kind of treatment. You got the vignetting happening, but in terms of choosing the green, kind of plays with the environment. It kind of looks like it kind of masks out a little bit part of the pier, or just the blacks didn't, take with the green. But I think it's fine on that. It has a interesting treatment of the sky and the water, kind of creating this kind of mottled look to it. My only question would be the lower right-hand corner, whether the inclusion of the rocks contributes. I kind of would like to see the consistency of the vignette, really kind of put our focus on the pier and the perspective leading to the center at the horizon line. And that might be a minor quibble, but nonetheless, I think it would be interesting to see kind of a before and after in terms of the placement of the rocks. But otherwise, I think it has an interesting kind of vintage look to it. So in terms of the manipulation that was added to it, I think it was a good call. And as a result of that, I gave it a 16.
Honda Point.
Kind of a wonderful coastal view type of shot. Good. I'm thinking early morning light, if I'm correct in terms of orientation of the sun coming over the bank and the train kind of along the coast. I think there's a lot of good things happening here in terms of the composition, like the perspective. I don't know if it could have been put yourself in front of the little post, or the post kind of, because I'm not sure how they contribute insofar as they kind of block the view of the train on the one hand. Because I think it'd be nice to see the perspective all the way through with the line of the trains, and it would emphasize the length of the actual train cars themselves and the train tracks. I think that could be an arguable point, but nonetheless, I like the features of the coast itself. So I think it's a photograph that has a couple of interesting elements that kind of speak to the environment. You get this, train transport that one could argue is like, well, blocking the serenity and the view of the coast. But I think it also shows an element of reality, and it's a nice kind of jarring juxtaposition of kind of competing concerns. But I think it works, and I like how the light works hitting the train cars and then kind of delving into the shadow out into the surf. And so there's a lot of nice things happening with this photograph as well. And I scored it a 16.
Okay, we have some ties to break again. We're going to pick Third, an honorable mention again from, we need to look at number 4, Butterfly. Number 6, LA Rain. And let's see, Microburst, number 13.
13, you said?
13.
And so this is for third place?
This is gonna, we need to pick a third and an honorable mention.
Right, okay.
I have 1, 2. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Okay,
I'm gonna go with the Butterfly at third,
Okay.
and honorable mention would be the Microburst.
Okay.
I
okay,
can see I'm fading into darkness. I'm gonna turn my light on.
I'm ready. This is a photographer's playground. First place by Elaine Calvert.
Beautiful tonal qualities.
Thank you.
Is that Ed?
What's that?
Is that Ed, the photographer?
That's a stranger.
Oh, okay. Kind of looks like Ed.
Yeah, no,
Where?
Where was that shot?
that was at Zabrinsky Point and Death Valley.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And
I don't think I've ever quite seen it with those tones.
I kind of got to single in on just the one. Thank you. This is Birds of a Feather by Gregory Doudna. Boxcar Shadow Play by Penny Powell. Butterfly and Third Place by Ed E. Powell. End of the Day and Second Place by Harold Letweiler. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. LA Rain by Chuck Hubley. Masked Tanager by Frank Trump. Piedras Blancas by Cheryl Decker. Smoke Break by Tony Martindale. By the River's Edge by Penny Powell. Help by Chuck Hubley. Locomotive by Ed E. Powell. Microburst and Honorable Mention by Frank Trump. Nostalgia by Tony Martindale. And Honda Point by Chuck Hubley.
Okay.
Yeah, I found the color grouping to be, I think, a little bit more competitive than the monochrome.
Yeah. Tony, was yours with that blur? Was that somebody running by?
No, it's somebody riding a bicycle by.
Riding bike. Okay, it was somebody passing through. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my big mystery.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's the only thing that made sense is somebody went by really quick.
And the
Yeah.
Ferryman Townhouse is a pub in Dublin, Ireland.
Okay.
Okay. Well, a lot of good work.
Yes.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it
All
was
right.
very appreciative. Thank you.
Hey, and do you have anything you want to show us of your work?
If you guys want to see.
Sure.
Sure.
We do, or at least I do.
I'll bring it up and then I'll share my screen. Okay, I haven't used WebEx. Say, do I have my share screen somewhere?
Just like Zoom, go up to the top, there'll be a share, or I'm sorry, there's a share down at the bottom in this.
Yeah, it's grayed out.
It's grayed out.
It says allow WebEx meetings to record your computer screen so you can share. Oh, I have to.
You have to go into your preferences and give permission. I went through that. And it looks
Okay,
like,
yeah, I got it. Give me a second. I'll go ahead and apply that. And so then I let WebEx record my meeting, right?
yes.
Yeah.
But then it says, do I want to leave this meeting and then come back?
Oh,
I don't think so. I don't, you know, I've never tried to have two people record simultaneously.
Oh,
As the host, I'm recording.
right.
well, when you're on an Apple computer, to share your screen, they call it recording.
Hmm.
So you have to say allow recording on WebEx, and then you can share. You're not really recording.
Yeah. Yeah, normally it just gives permission to share my camera, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
your
Yeah.
screen.
All right, well, let me see if I click out, what happens? Nothing.
So, what's your goal in this? We're recording this and we will post this on our website. We'll edit it, compress it, whatever, but it'll be up on our website in a couple of days if you want to get a copy of this.
But he's just trying to share his screen.
Oh, well, then it should be share, not record.
Right.
On the Apple computer.
You want to have, whatever you want to share has to be open on your desktop first.
No, but he's saying that the share button is grayed out. It's not
Right.
active.
Yeah, let me try this.
Yes,
It's basically saying that I have to leave the meeting and then restart. So,
Oh,
Well,
I
you
think
can
you
do
do
that,
when you
but
when you
just
change
re-click the
it.
same link you entered the first time.
okay,
It's because you
so
changed
let me
it.
unlock it and then I'll do that.
It was nice seeing you, Rudy.
Yeah, right. If I'm back in 5 minutes.
Is Harold present here? I don't see
Yeah,
Harold.
Harold's here.
I'm here.
Am I pronouncing your last name right? Is it Litweiler or
Well, Litweiler. Litweiler.
Litweiler?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Litweiler.
Yeah.
I'll remember next time.
Okay.
Here he was gone.
Okay, he checked out.
Harold, your,
Yes.
your virtual background looks pretty familiar.
Yeah, I would say. I was trying to find something more unique, but I just happen to have those pictures on my iPad. So
Yeah, very good. I think Elaine and Ron and Tony can all relate to
Yes.
your background.
Yeah, we just had a
Meetup.
a
I
field.
think Rudy did an excellent job of commenting what he liked and does not like. What
Oh,
was
yeah.
good about an image, what wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that Ed finally won for Steve whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a great shot.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. I
was that the saxophone picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I was surprised last time we did the judging that he didn't win something. I was like, But every judge is a little bit different, I guess. So
Yeah, well, it's all very subjective when it comes
Yeah.
to interest. They're usually fairly consistent when it comes to technique composition. But when it comes to interest, that's a very subjective topic.
Yeah.
And so that's why we allow people to submit images twice for judging.
Yep, and that was the second time, wasn't it, for that one?
It
Yeah,
was.
that and the butterfly.
Yeah, the butterfly was the second time also.
Both nice images. Very deserving of placing.
And I was very surprised after he commented on my macaws, and he gave it a 19. I said, what?
Yeah.
But then he backtracks and, oh, that was a 13.
I thought
Then I go, okay, well, I did not personalize it.
Now I have some bird competition, Greg.
Yeah, okay. Not much. I took that at the Santa Barbara Zoo years ago.
Oh.
Which one of you guys is going to give the bird?
I'll let Greg do that. There you go.
it's really hard at this age to control, the background and the light and everything.
and the angle of the bird, if you can just teach them how to do that.
Yeah,
Now, they are very good at sitting still.
Yeah.
they don't cooperate.
I wonder if Rudy is going to come back.
Maybe he was just looking for an escape.
Yeah.
I got 4 invitations and none of them were addressed to me. That's what took me a while to get. They all said to Ronald Calvert.
There's
He's back.
But
Hello,
they were,
Rudy.
it was like it was forwarded from Ron's.
I made it.
Is your share activated now?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
Now I got to find my website.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, share, and then
There.
There it is.
yeah. So I have it organized by various projects. So I give you like the bigger picture here will give you an idea. So the first one is car park views, and then gas stations, freeways, fast food. I tend to work in series. So I'll give you can tell me when to move on from a given series, but this is car park views, kind of photographing from inside parking structures, looking out to produce this kind of what I call a view. It's kind of more or less a kind of construct of imagining almost like a theatrical set. So I'll just give you kind of a scroll through a few of these and show you a different project. So I kind of discovered this at the very start of COVID last year. And so I made it a point of photographing without the actual cars in the environment, and basically kind of started to explore the kind of aesthetic value that these places might embody in terms of kind of looking at whether you're looking at another architecture or the quality of light, or the barriers between the inside space and the outside space, and how the lines in the parking garage kind of work as leading lines. So I felt there was all kinds of potential to kind of explore.
They all have a little bit of a minimalistic quality. I mean,
Yeah, a lot of them do, unlike this one, perhaps.
well, yeah, except
And so, I started discovering a kind of a rich variety that we wouldn't normally consider a parking structure. I don't know if your part of town probably doesn't have as many, certainly not as many as Irvine. Irvine's I would imagine the capital of the world of parking garages.
Well, there's so much business down there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these are actually on campus. We
Okay.
have six parking garages there, so that proved to be a kind of a treasure trove, as it were.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
that's
Cal Poly up here has a lot of parking structures.
okay.
that's a cool project. I like that. Not something you would, like you said, that you would ordinarily think of.
Yeah, that tends to be what I'm looking for. These are the gas stations at night.
I thought it was interesting when I looked at this before that there was no cars.
Yeah, no cars. And sometimes it's a frustrating waiting game. You know,
Yeah.
like there'll be a couple cars in the bays, they leave, and sure enough, another car pulls up. Or the attendant at the gas station wants to empty the trash, you know, after waiting a half hour for. But I think it's an example of considering objects or places and trying to work out. Like I imagine these, or my treatment of them kind of makes them into like theatrical sets with the high contrast of the night sky, and I do, you know, a fair amount of Photoshop to eliminate the background.
These are all digital?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're all handheld too. I don't have the opportunity to kind of rush out there with a tripod and carefully compose my image. So a lot of that is going to happen in post in terms of correcting for perspective. You can't tell as I'm looking at individually, but I try to have the same amount of sky with each image. So there's some kind of running linear element to these. And once you start looking at these, you start appreciating how much difference, architecturally speaking, design, all those kind of good things. So a lot of these projects, ironically, have to deal with the car, except that I don't show the car.
Well, and it's appropriate for LA because you virtually can't exist down there without a car. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So this series I'm showing you all have the car as a player or an actor, but rarely are they present. So again, kind of a night view this time, looking at fast food restaurants.
Do you mostly shoot at night or is it just for these projects?
Well, with these, the nighttime, I think, makes them more attractive. You can take an unattractive facade, make it look a little sexier with the way the color and light contrast against the
big
dark
part of
sky.
it, yeah.
Yeah, that's mostly the light is what pops these out.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't
actually
get
has
that.
a couple of photos of our local Chevron stations at night, which are very much like this.
Mhm.
Impactful of view. And seeing a gas station all lit up and no cars, it's like, what?
I post them on one of the Facebook pages, and I get a lot of that. Like, our gas stations don't look like that. They're never empty. How do you get it? But you can, and you know, similar thing happening with the freeways.
There's no cars on the freeways, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I don't see any cars on the freeway.
Oh, but it looks like there's a person on that one.
Where?
What is that? Well, maybe it's a pylon.
Right here?
Yeah, look, almost looks like a person.
Oh yeah.
Rudy, I haven't seen your freeway series, but are you familiar with John Humble's freeway series work?
No.
Yeah, it's similar to what you're doing, but his are in color.
Oh, okay.
You might look him up. I think you'll see.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Is he the one that taught at OCC for a long time?
No, he was over at Fullerton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
There's a culprit.
yeah.
This one's unfinished. Don't look.
You can tell these are all
Too many
they
cars.
all look like California with the palm trees and
Yeah, right.
Were you parked along the freeway at any of these, or were you off someplace where it was legal to be standing? In other words, were you on the freeway when you made these photos?
I was on the freeway.
You were driving?
Yes.
All right.
Not recommended activity.
Yeah, yeah.
And so by virtue of that, I'm actually pleased with the results.
Because the reason I asked that is Humble shot his. He parked on the freeway and made the photographs, but
Yeah,
it,
I'm not sure which is more dangerous or which is safer.
yeah. Well, it's a $300 fine, and so what he did is he went down
What's a
to
$300 fine to
for
pull over?
being parked for no reason and being
Mm.
standing on the freeway. It's a $300 fine. This was years ago, so it might be more than that now. But what he
Right.
did is he went down and he bought himself one of these vests, these red and yellow vests,
Sure.
and he had a van, a Ford van, and one of these lights that you could plug into your cigarette lighter, and he put it on the top of the van. And he said highway patrol went by and thought he was just a worker.
Well, having a van helps.
Yes, it does.
This project is kind of more, I don't know if it's experimental, but not as evident in terms of what you're looking at. It's more about how the lights kind of define the space. So it's another night project. I don't know what you guys, this one I always kind of curious how people respond to this series.
It's the War of the Worlds.
Yeah, they have
Yeah,
that kind
if
of,
you limited all the vertical poles, it would look like alien spaceships. So,
yeah, right. Yeah, they would be hovering in space, right?
yeah.
So whenever somebody asks me, it's like what my work is like, maybe you get an idea that it's not quite easy to classify, or
It's rather eclectic.
there you go. I think I will borrow that.
You did say urban.
Yeah, right. And I'll show you one more, which is again kind of more of a kind of digital work. I do, my website does have some photographs from Japan as well. But I haven't shown this. I don't know if I haven't shown this in the PE, Jim, right?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen this work.
And I just call it waves. And basically I kind of like create this checkerboard pattern. And my idea is to kind of emphasize the motion of the foreground waves near the shore. And I felt that this technique of masking and superimposing two images would kind of create that dynamic that a blurred photo that would show motion wouldn't quite achieve.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a lot like Diane's work with her weaving of the photos, actual physically weaving them together.
Yeah, it's kind of a virtual application of that
Yeah.
concept.
I like that effect of that. That's cool.
Yeah, if you have, I welcome any comments. This work hasn't been shopped around yet.
Now,
So you basically layer two images and then you put a grid on it and mask out alternate images. Is that what you're doing?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. It's an interesting effect.
Yeah, I'm hoping it is at least.
yeah,
If it kind of conveys the activity of the ocean. So that's,
Yeah, I like it.
Tried anywhere, I mean, in a lot of these, the backgrounds and the colors are fairly monotonous. Have you tried anywhere the one is really, really blue and the other one's really, really orange red?
I've stuck within the limited color palette, but I
Okay.
do kind of use like the vibrance tool which really works on blues a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll add some of that to it, and that separates it. But I go between the two, kind of making it a little bit subtle, where the checkboards are in the sky, to
Right.
delineate it a little bit heavier.
I think that's what's so intriguing because you can tell they kind of go together, but they don't at
Right.
the same time. So
Do you have some from Japan? Just
I have large format stuff
okay.
or street stuff
How about the street
or
stuff?
vending machines.
Well, you pick, but
Well, I'll show you the Tokyo one because Tokyo is such a place that you can go there and all of a sudden make kind of instant series. So I like to call this one, is emphasis on public signage and billboards and how the person in the ad almost has as if they have a kind of direct communication with the viewer of my photograph and in the environment. So the people that are flanking it in this case are relatively oblivious to it, where we have this kind of private or personal kind of connection that the gaze of the model is sharing with us, or multiple models. As pedestrians kind of walk by, the gaze of the models is directed back towards us or the camera. This one here, we caught a good juxtaposition with the ad and this guy, and kind of like almost like a knowing, sly smile. And Tokyo is a great place for this kind of thing. It's like you just start observing the environment and you can make up these various series. You're kind of looking through the train itself, again with the gaze redirected back at us, with the populace inside the train unbeknownst. Even with this one, I find it kind of curious. It's almost as if the eyes of the ad follow the viewer, because this is street level and you wouldn't think they'd be looking up.
yeah,
But when you're on the street, it doesn't appear that they're looking that extreme. But I'm up, there's 3 floors, 3 flights. And I like, the street photography there is really nice because it's almost like a ready-made tableau of
Now-
again, like a theater set.
now in this one, it looks like the model, and this one too, the models are Caucasian.
Yeah,
And-
you're right.
And
Yeah.
when I was in South Korea 2 years ago, almost all of the models were Caucasian, which I found really interesting.
Right. Well, not only that, a lot of the signage is in English.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're not very woke, are they?
No, so here's a third Caucasian and it's for Prada, which kind of makes sense.
Right. But again, even like in a crowded environment, you can find the one sign where there's like a direct acknowledgement of us, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like just peeking their head above the crowd. And this one here with the guy going about putting up these posters, but again, kind of like back at us. So I find it really curious and humorous. It's fun to make these juxtapositions. And the other thing too, when you're photographing people there, it's like they're not bothered by it if if you're just going about your business.
Well, have you ever been to Hawaii?
Not recently.
Yeah, well, all you see is Japanese making photographs of their girlfriends and each other. I mean, they're really into making photographs,
Oh yeah. Right. And so as I was saying, it's like there's so many subject matter that you can just isolate and say, like bikes on the street as one example,
Mm-hmm.
or thousands of bikes on the street,
Oh,
the old bike corral.
Now, these are not large format, or are they large format?
No, these are all digital capture.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It'd be hard to set up large format to get some of those.
Oh yeah. And then I even have like a category for escalators. So I'll give you an idea. Tokyo's got to be the world capital of escalators. So you can go there and just make an observation, say, okay, I'm going to do a series of this and that. And there's plenty of examples that you can kind of exploit.
Yeah.
On the train or waiting for the train or the train itself.
That's a train above there, right? And that
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. And then, of course, cell phones are a big deal in public.
Mm-hmm. Guy lost a leg, it looks like.
Well, his pants anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one was taken back in 2005, and there's only one person on the phone. If I retook this tomorrow, it would be maybe all but one without a phone.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys allowing me to indulge myself and taking a look at the work.
Very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rudy. I really did want you to show your work because I think it's outstanding.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's see, where's my stop sharing button?
At the top.
It's usually up top center of the screen. You have to hover up there.
Oh, there you go, right. Stop sharing, all right.
Very good.
And when I looked at it with no comments on the things like the parking garage with no cars, the gas stations with no cars, and then when I got to the one with the waves and the squares, I'm going like,
What about
I was just wondering, what was this? And then now that you
Oh.
explain it, it makes sense.
it? Yeah, it is a bit of the oddball one in terms of what I have on my website. It's the most overtly digital or photoshopped, if I can use that as a verb, which is proper parlance these days.
Yeah, Photoshop has been a verb for quite a few years now.
But I
Right.
like how they're in categories, how you had a project and, you know, you just really explored that idea. That's something I should do more of.
Yeah, I think, it's like my philosophy around photography is like you get to know where you live and then you start making observations. And then, like I mentioned, I like to work in a series. So then one might be the catalyst for more. And then as I start to photograph, it evolves in terms of the formal concerns of how to photograph them. Like the gas station really evolved and finally settled on a more kind of frontal view and to kind of begin to strip away some of this more subjective concerns that I may have had at the start.
Very good.
Well, yeah, your series always the perspective is always the same within the series.
Yeah.
If I explain that right, but you always have the same. They have the same look because the what you're shooting and the way you're shooting is very consistent.
Yeah, I like to, tie it in together. I think it
Yeah.
strengthens the idea of a series.